I think that when the Ford carrier battle group arrives, probably in a couple of days, a little uncertain, that the United States will launch missile attacks against Venezuela. The question on those attacks is whether they will be focused on the cartels or whether they will focus on the Maduro regime. An invasion is out of the question at this point. The United States just does not have enough ground troops in theater to invade Venezuela. There are 2,200 Marines, but the Venezuelan ground forces number something like 90,000. So the Marines, as good as they are, just aren't sufficient without substantial reinforcement.
Washington has sent its biggest naval build-up to the Caribbean since the Cuban Missile Crisis, surrounding Venezuela with warships, bombers and drones. Moscow warns it could respond with hypersonic missiles to defend President Maduro, as tensions spike over US strikes on alleged drug traffickers. The situation has raised fears of a major confrontation. But how close is the region really to conflict? Mark Cancian, Senior Advisor with the Center for Strategic and International Studies and a retired Marine Colonel, is on the show with us now. Good afternoon, Mark. Thank you for joining us on Times Radio. Could you give us a sense of how serious this is? How much really is there a risk of direct conflict between America and Russia over Venezuela?
The risk of a confrontation between the United States and Russia is very low. Fortunately, Russia has its hands full in Ukraine. Venezuela is very far away from Russia. Russia has few tools that it could use to support Venezuela. On the other hand, the possibility of conflict between the United States and Venezuela is very high. What began as an operation against alleged drug smuggling boats has now broadened to an effort against the Maduro regime.
And do you believe, Mark, that that is the ultimate aim of these American strikes? To destabilize the Maduro regime or to try and provoke a reaction from them? What are the tactics of the Trump administration?
The main impetus for the attack on the boats is counter-drug. The Trump administration campaigned on a platform of reducing the flow of illegal drugs in the United States, particularly fentanyl, which has killed many Americans. I think that that is a very sincere element of what they're trying to do. On the other hand, there are elements in the government who want to get rid of the Maduro regime, who feel that it has been in power too long, that it is corrupt, that it is a narco-terrorist regime. The United States is joined in that opinion by many other countries which regard the Venezuelan opposition as a legitimate country, legitimate government. So I think that as time has gone on, the United States has been pursuing both objectives.
But, I mean, what is the evidence for the fact that the people that have been killed, and as I understand it, there have been 65 individuals who've been killed in 16 separate attacks. What is the evidence that they really are transporting drugs to America? Because we haven't seen the evidence, have we?
We have not. The administration has claimed that they are drug runners, but there are two items that indicate that maybe they are, in fact, drug runners. The first is that members of Congress have been briefed on these strikes, and when they came out, several of them said that they were convinced that these were, in fact, drug runners, even though they were not satisfied with all the information they received from the administration. The other thing is that there are journalists who are now interviewing family members of people who have been killed, and none of them have come back and said this was a innocent fishing boat. In fact, it looks like they were, in fact, drug runners.
But the Trump administration seems obsessed with fentanyl for very good reasons. And as I understand it, fentanyl comes across the border on land from Mexico. It's not coming from boats from Venezuela, is it?
No, the consensus is that the boats in the Caribbean are bringing cocaine and marijuana, principally to Europe, but also to the United States. That fentanyl comes through Mexico, as you note, and along the Eastern Pacific.
And how far do you think this is going to go? Because as you point out, Congress have been briefed. They seem to have given a green light to Trump to carry on attacking without any form of approval. I'm just wondering how far this can go.
I think it's going to go quite far. I think that when the Ford Carrier Battle Group arrives, probably in a couple of days, a little uncertain, that the United States will launch missile attacks against Venezuela. The question on those attacks is whether they will be focused on the cartels or whether they will focus on the Maduro regime. An invasion is out of the question at this point. The United States just does not have enough ground troops in theater to invade Venezuela. There are 2,200 Marines, but the Venezuelan ground forces number something like 90,000. So the Marines, as good as they are, just aren't sufficient without substantial reinforcement.
But America has started shifting far more troops. I mean, the USS General R. Ford, which is a huge aircraft carrier, I mean, that's been shipped or is moving slowly. I don't know if it's actually arrived at Venezuela yet. Is this purely as a show of force on the part of the Trump administration?
Absolutely. The majority of the forces are naval and air forces, not ground forces. And when the Ford arrives, there will be substantial capability to conduct air and missile strikes on Venezuela. There'll be a total of about 180 Tomahawk missiles on the ships, and then aircraft on the carrier, and then from Florida itself. The movement of the Ford has been important because it is a very poor platform for counter-drug operations. It has a few helicopters that might help in that regard, but its great capability is the strike capability in its air wing, 48 fighter attack aircraft, and those would be very powerful against targets in Venezuela.
And you point out that it's completely unrealistic for Russia to get involved directly with this, but I'm wondering whether we should be worried about them supplying Venezuela with hypersonic missiles. And I'm wondering what that would mean, if they did go ahead, for regional security.
I think it's extremely unlikely that they would be able to do that. The first is the United States, of course, is watching what goes on, and the Russians have sent a plane or two of spare parts and munitions to Venezuela. But if they tried to supply anything more powerful, the United States would see it, and I'm sure the United States would take it out. And the Venezuelans know that, and the Russians know that. We went through this in the 1960s with the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think everyone remembers that, and I think the Russians remember that also. Plus, the Russians are very tied down in Ukraine. They can't afford to anger the United States too much because they know that if President Trump gets angered with them, he might provide Ukraine with additional weapons and munitions that would make their war there that much harder.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much indeed for your time and insights. That was Mark Cancian, Senior Advisor with the Centre for Strategic and International Studies, and indeed a former Marine Colonel.